They tell you to quit, to stop, to walk away from the thing that's been poisoning your life. But they don't ask why you keep going back to it. They don't ask what's beneath the surface. Because it's easier to shame a symptom than to understand the soul behind it. Addiction isn't always about the substance. It's not always the alcohol, the pills, the gambling, the food, the chaos, or even the person. Sometimes it's about silence. Sometimes it's about pain too complex to be named. It's about an inner wound that's still bleeding, one that no one ever saw, and maybe you've never truly faced. And every time you reach for that thing, it's not because you're weak. It's because you're trying to forget. You're trying to disappear, even if only for a moment. Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." And maybe that's what addiction really is, an attempt to outrun the self, to numb the truth, to distract the psyche from what's been buried. But what if healing doesn't begin with discipline, but with honesty? What if the first step is not quitting, but confronting? Not the habit, but the hunger underneath it. That's where most people get it wrong. They focus on stopping the behavior, cold turkey, force, guilt, shame. They punish themselves into sobriety. And when it doesn't work, they fall deeper. Because you can't fight a ghost with a sword. You have to learn its name. Ask yourself, what was I trying not to feel? What memory was too much to carry? What part of me did I silence long ago? Because until you face that, the origin, the seed, you'll keep finding new addictions, new distractions, new people to lose yourself in. Addiction isn't your flaw, it's your signal. It's your psyche crying out. It's the shadow Jung talked about, that unconscious part of you that holds everything you've rejected, denied, or been too afraid to see. And the truth is, you can't heal what you won't hold. You can't free what you keep in chains. But if you dare to turn inward, if you're brave enough to stop running, you might finally hear what the addiction was trying to say all along. I'm still here, and I need you. This isn't just recovery. This is a return, not to who you were before the addiction, but to who you were before the pain, before the silence, before you forgot that your soul had a voice. And maybe it's time to remember. You've tried to run from it. You've called it other names. You've blamed the substances, the people, the moments. You've called it boredom, pain, restlessness. You've said, I just need to relax, or it's how I cope. But the truth, the thing you never say out loud, the thing that shakes in your bones when you're alone, is that it's not about the addiction. It never was. It was always about the silence underneath. Addiction is rarely loud in its birth. It's a whisper, a tiny tremor beneath the skin, a faint ache for something forgotten. And slowly, without fanfare, it becomes the thing you turn to when you don't know where else to go. It becomes ritual, refuge, religion. Carl Jung believed that addiction was at its core a spiritual crisis. He once said that the alcoholic's craving was actually a misplaced yearning for wholeness, for God. And whether or not you name it that way, you felt it. That longing, that hollow echo in your chest, that unrelenting ache for something more. So you chase relief, but what you're really chasing is reunion with yourself, with the parts of you that you were never taught how to love, the versions of you that got shut down, shut out, punished, or ignored, the child that was told to stop crying, the teenager who numbed instead of screamed, the adult who buried dreams in favor of survival. And the world? The world offered you fixes, escape routes, temporary highs, quick hits of validation, connection, control. You became masterful at hiding the war. A smile here, a joke there, productivity, busyness, a curated life that looked just functional enough to avoid questions. But inside, you were unraveling, slowly, quietly, spectacularly. Addiction isn't weakness. It's about the ache for something sacred. It's about the unbearable weight of being half alive. It's about how hard it is to hold pain without relief. And no one taught you how. So you reached for what was closest, what worked, at least temporarily. And yet, somewhere in you, a part still remembers. A part still believes healing is possible. Not the kind that comes from punishment or shame, but the kind that starts with truth. The kind that requires brutal honesty. The kind that says, I'm not okay, and I want more than this. Jung spoke often of the shadow, the parts of us we reject, deny, repress. Addiction lives there. It feeds off the parts you've disowned. It grows in the dark, in the places you pretend it don't exist. And until you turn toward it, not with hate, but with curiosity, you'll keep repeating the cycle. The answer isn't discipline alone. It isn't gritting your teeth and being stronger. The answer is integration. Seeing the child in you who needed comfort and offering it now. Feeling the rage that never got expressed and letting it move through you. Naming the grief that's been sitting like stone in your belly. Listening to your body's signals. Honoring the ache. Sitting in the discomfort, not to suffer, but to reclaim your truth. Because addiction thrives in separation. Healing begins in reunion. You don't need to become someone else. You need to come back to who you were before the pain taught you to hide. And that requires courage. Not the loud kind, the quiet kind. The kind that stays. The kind that listens. The kind that says, I will no longer abandon myself, even when I'm scared. This is the path Jung pointed to, not away from pain, but into it. Not to destroy the addiction, but to understand the message it carries. Because underneath every destructive pattern is a sacred need, unmet, unspoken, unloved. You can begin there, in the silence, in the stillness, in the smallest act of presence. And slowly, piece by piece, something shifts. You feel again. You remember. You breathe. You return. You keep trying to treat the symptom, the craving, the compulsion, the repeating thought that won't leave you alone. But what if I told you that the thing you're chasing, the thing you can't stop reaching for, isn't the problem at all? It's the smoke, not the fire. The surface, not the depth. The symptom of a soul trying to scream, even when your mouth says nothing at all. Carl Jung once said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. And that's what addiction is, a deep avoidance. An unconscious pact you made to survive something you didn't know how to name. You weren't born with this need. It was born in you. Born the first time you felt invisible in a room full of people. Born the first time you were told your emotions were too much. Born the first time you were punished for being real. So you reached, not for joy, not for fun, but for silence, for numbness, for escape. Because somewhere inside, a part of you decided that silence was safer than truth. You didn't choose your first escape consciously. It found you. Through a drink, a screen, a person, a high, a behavior, something that said, here, feel this instead. And at first, it worked. Until it didn't. Until it started to need more of you than it gave. Until it became the very cage you thought would set you free. Addiction doesn't ask for your permission. It slides in through the cracks of your unhealed moments. It wraps itself around your patterns and convinces you that you are the craving, that you are the escape, that the urge is stronger than the self. But it's not. Because here's the truth no one talks about. Addiction is not your enemy. It's your teacher. It's the messenger of a self you've buried so deep you forgot it was ever yours. It says, look here, this is the wound. This is the moment you stopped believing you were enough. And until you face that moment, not intellectually, not analytically, but in the marrow of your soul, it will keep repeating. You will keep reaching. And healing will remain a concept instead of an experience. Jung believed that healing only happens when the unconscious becomes conscious, when you look directly into the eyes of your shadow and stop pretending it's not there. Because you can't heal what you still deny. You can't transcend what you refuse to touch. You can't return home to yourself while still running from the version of you that was hurt. It's not about stopping the addiction. It's about listening to it. What is it asking you to see? What part of you is begging to be held, not numbed? You've spent so long punishing yourself for coping the only way you knew how. But punishment doesn't heal wounds. Presence does. And presence is terrifying, isn't it? To sit with yourself in silence with no distraction and finally meet the pain that started it all. But that's the work. Not to destroy the addiction, but to understand it. To walk backwards through its timeline until you find the child who needed love and got silence instead. That child is still there, waiting for you. And when you stop abandoning them, the craving loses its grip. Not overnight, not all at once, but piece by piece. Because when you feel what you were never allowed to feel, you no longer need to escape. And you stop confusing relief with healing. Addiction is not the end of your story. It's the messenger that brought you back to the beginning, to the moment you disconnected from yourself. And if you can face that fully, courageously, lovingly, you will realize that the only thing stronger than the craving is the self that was never truly lost, only buried. And now, it's time to come home. They tried to silence it. The ache, the emptiness, the voice inside that kept whispering, this isn't who you really are. And so they reached for noise, for comfort, for anything that would drown the quiet scream beneath their ribs. Addiction didn't start with desire. It started with pain. A pain that had no name, but begged to be numbed. Carl Jung knew this. He once said, every form of addiction is bad, no matter whether the narcotic be alcohol, morphine, or idealism. He wasn't condemning weakness. He was naming disconnection, the human split between who we pretend to be and who we truly are. And this is the true wound beneath all addiction. We fear ourselves more than we fear suffering. It's not the bottle or the pills or the toxic love we're clinging to. It's the moment right before silence, when we might finally have to face the truth we've been running from, that we feel like we are not enough, not good enough, not strong enough, not lovable, not whole. And so we reach outward for proof, for something, anything to soothe the war inside. We call it coping, but it's really avoidance. You see, most people don't want healing. They want anesthesia. They want comfort that doesn't confront them. But true healing, it's brutal. It calls you back to the scenes you buried. It makes you stare into your past with trembling hands and say, I see you, and I won't abandon you again. That's why so few ever reach wholeness. Because it doesn't come with applause. It comes with solitude, with long nights, with shadow work. Carl Jung taught us that to truly heal, we must integrate the shadow. We must acknowledge the parts of ourselves we disowned, the rage, the shame, the fear. And not just acknowledge them, but sit with them, speak to them, invite them home. The addict isn't weak. They are intuitive. They are sensitive souls who felt too much and had no tools to hold it, so they reached for what numbed them fastest, what distracted them longest, what gave the illusion of relief. But the real power, it begins when you stop asking the pain to leave, and instead you ask it why it came. Because beneath every craving is a question. Do I matter? Am I safe? Will I ever feel whole again? And beneath every addiction is a story. A soul who learned early that vulnerability was dangerous, that expression brought punishment, that presence wasn't safe, and so they disappeared. One hit at a time, one lie at a time, one day at a time. Until the person in the mirror became a stranger, and even that became too painful to face. But listen, there is no substance strong enough to erase your soul. It's still there, under the rubble, under the shame, under the years of hiding and running and surviving. You don't need to be fixed. You need to be found by yourself. You are not broken. You are buried. And the excavation begins the moment you say, I am willing to feel again. Not just joy, but grief. Not just light, but shadow. Because feeling is the path to wholeness. Not numbing, not escaping, but returning. Returning to the child who once believed in love. Returning to the heart that never wanted to become so cold. Returning to the soul that still whispers even now, there's more to you than this. Carl Jung believed that healing required integration, not destruction, not denial, but union. Union with your fear, with your desires, with the wild, sacred self you've been told to tame. You can't heal what you won't face, and you can't face what you're still ashamed of. But you're not alone, and you were never meant to do this alone. Every time you take one honest breath, every time you let yourself cry instead of hide, every time you speak the truth instead of pretending, you are healing. You're not behind. You're not too far gone. You're awakening. And that's the scariest and most sacred thing you'll ever do, because it means giving up the life you created to survive, to finally live the one meant for you. And if you made it this far, something in you is ready to feel, ready to heal, ready to rise. So don't stop here. If this spoke to you, if it stirred something ancient in your bones, then this is your sign to keep going, to keep facing it, to keep coming home to yourself. And if you want more of this truth, if you want more reminders that you're not alone on this path, then subscribe. Because this space was made for souls like yours, souls who see beneath the surface, souls who feel what others ignore, souls who are brave enough to remember who they really are. This is not the end, it's the beginning. And you belong here.